The single dad opened his eyes at 6 in the morning and his heart stopped cold, because lying right beside him on the couch, still in her work clothes from the night before, was his boss. Her shoes were off. Her jacket was folded over the armrest like she'd taken care to be neat about it. And for 3 full seconds, the single dad could not remember a single thing about how she got there. He sat up so fast his back cracked. Oh no. Oh no, no, no. His mind raced through every worst-case scenario a man could imagine, and every single one of them ended with him losing the only job keeping food on the table for his 8-year-old daughter. He looked down at himself, still fully dressed. He looked at her, also fully dressed, sleeping peacefully like she didn't have a care in the world, one hand tucked under her cheek. The single dad had no name for the panic clawing up his throat. He just knew that whatever happened last night was about to change everything, and he had absolutely no memory of how it started. His name doesn't matter for this story, only what he was fighting for. 6 months earlier he'd lost his wife to a car accident on a rainy Tuesday, and since then it had just been him and his little girl, Emma, trying to figure out how to survive each day without falling apart in front of each other. He worked as a delivery route supervisor for a regional shipping company. A decent job, steady hours, until his boss, a woman named Diane, took over the district 3 months ago. Diane had a reputation, sharp, demanding, not the type who asked about your weekend. The single dad had barely spoken 10 personal words to her since she started. So when his phone rang at 11 the previous night and it was Diane's number, his stomach dropped before he even answered. Hello, it's Diane. I need you to come to the warehouse. Now, there's a problem with the Henderson shipment, and if it's not fixed by morning, we lose the contract. He'd looked over at Emma, already asleep, and called his neighbor Carol to sit with her, the way he'd done a dozen times before when work called. He drove to the warehouse expecting an angry lecture. What he found instead was Diane sitting alone on a stack of pallets, staring at a spreadsheet, looking more exhausted than he'd ever seen a person look. Everything okay? He asked, and Diane laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. No, nothing's okay. My mother's in the hospital in another state. I haven't slept in 2 days, and if I lose this contract, I lose my job too. You're not the only one hanging on by a thread around here. The single dad hadn't expected that. He hadn't expected her to be human. They worked through the shipment error together for hours, and somewhere between midnight and 2 in the morning, something shifted. She told him about her mother's declining health. He told her, for the first time to anyone at work, about losing his wife. I don't know how you do it, Diane said quietly. Get up every day and keep going. I don't have a choice, he said. My daughter needs me standing up, not falling apart. Diane went quiet after that, just staring at him like she was seeing him for the first time. By 2:30, the problem was fixed, but neither of them had the strength to drive. Just rest for a minute, Diane said, sinking onto the office couch in the break room. 5 minutes. The single dad remembered sitting down in the chair across from her. He remembered his eyes getting heavy. He did not remember falling asleep, and he certainly did not remember waking up on the same couch as her, because at some point in those exhausted early hours, they had simply drifted toward each other the way 2 tired people do when the world finally goes quiet. But here's where the story could have gone very differently, and almost did, because someone else had already seen them. The night janitor, a man named Robert, had walked past the break room around 5:30, seen 2 figures asleep on the couch, and by 7:15, before the single dad had even made it home to shower, a text had already gone out to 3 other employees. You won't believe what I saw at the warehouse. By the time the single dad walked through the front doors that afternoon for his regular shift, the whispers had already started. Coworkers went silent when he passed. Someone snickered near the break room. His face burned with humiliation he didn't deserve. He found Diane in her office, door open, staring at nothing. People are talking, he said. I know, she said, voice flat. I got called into HR an hour ago. His heart sank straight through the floor. Are you going to lose your job? I don't know yet. She looked up at him, and for the first time, he saw real fear in her eyes, not about her career, but about something else. I told them the truth, every bit of it. Whether they believe me is up to them. The single dad felt something twist in his chest. A mix of guilt and helplessness he hadn't felt since the night his wife didn't come home. This isn't fair. Nothing happened. We were just two exhausted people trying to save a shipment and a job, both of ours. Life isn't always fair, Diane said quietly, but sometimes people surprise you. That evening, the single dad sat at his kitchen table, unable to eat, watching Emma push peas around her plate. "Daddy, why do you look sad?" she asked, and he forced a smile he didn't feel. "Just a hard day at work, sweetheart." Emma set down her fork. "Did somebody say something mean to you?" Out of the mouths of babes, he thought. Something like that. Emma reached over and patted his hand, the same gesture her mother used to make. "Mommy always said mean things people say are usually about their own sad feelings. Not about you." The single dad felt his eyes sting. His daughter, 8 years old, understood something that grown adults in his workplace apparently didn't. The next morning, he was called into HR himself. He sat across from the same director Diane had spoken with, expecting the worst. But instead of accusations, the director slid a folder across the table. "We pulled the security footage from the loading bay entrance. Timestamps on the shipment fix. Diane's account of events matches exactly what we see. You two worked from 11 p.m. until nearly 3 a.m. solving a 6-figure shipping error. There is no ambiguity here." The single dad exhaled a breath he felt like he'd been holding for 2 full days. "So we're not in trouble?" "You're not in trouble," the director said, "but I want you to know something else. Diane specifically requested we look into who spread the rumor before verifying facts. That kind of behavior isn't something we tolerate, especially not aimed at someone going through what you're going through." Robert, the janitor, was given a formal warning for spreading unverified gossip that damaged 2 people's reputations. But something unexpected happened after that. Diane started stopping by the single dad's office more often, not to check on work, but to check on him. "How's Emma doing?" she'd ask. "She's still doing that thing where she leaves you notes in your lunch bag?" He hadn't remembered telling her that detail during their long night at the warehouse, but she'd remembered every word. Slowly, over the following weeks, something real started forming between 2 people who understood exhaustion, grief, and holding a family or a career together with nothing but stubbornness and love. 3 months later, Diane sat at the single dad's kitchen table for dinner, invited not by him, but by Emma, who had declared she wanted to meet the lady from Daddy's work who isn't scary at all. Diane brought a homemade lasagna and sat patiently while Emma explained, in extensive detail, the rules of her favorite card game. Watching them laugh together, the single dad felt something in his chest loosen that had been tight since the day his wife died. Not replacement, never replacement, but maybe room for something new to grow beside the grief instead of underneath it. "You know," Diane said later that night, after Emma had fallen asleep on the couch clutching a stuffed rabbit, "that whole nightmare with the rumors, waking up scared out of our minds, thinking our whole world was about to collapse over nothing. It ended up being the reason we actually got to know each other." The single dad nodded slowly. "Funny how the worst mornings sometimes turn into the best beginnings." Diane smiled, tired but genuine. "Funny how the people who judge fastest usually know the least." He thought about Robert, about the whispers, about how close 2 innocent people had come to losing everything over an assumption made in a dark hallway at 5:30 in the morning. And he thought about Grace, real Grace, the kind that shows up in security footage and honest conversations and a company willing to look past gossip toward truth. The lesson here is simple, but it's one we forget too easily. Never let a moment of confusion or a rush to judgment destroy something good before you understand the full story. The truth almost always comes out, but the damage done by careless words in the meantime can hurt people who did nothing wrong. Choose curiosity over accusation. Choose kindness over assumption. And sometimes, the very worst morning of your life is quietly setting the stage for the very best chapter still to come. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a comment to share your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Wings of Kindness for more inspiring stories. Remember, even the smallest act of kindness can change someone's life forever.